So today they are all very small paras. So first Tanika will read, then Pallavi will read. Tuesday is Pallavi's class.
Okay, Rangada.
Pallavi, how many? Is it 1 year ago or even more that we started?
Uh, 1 year
If
definitely.
I'm not mistaken, it is 3 years, Rangada.
Oh my!
2 years we started. We joined later.
Later,
I
but not
think.
very much. Not very much later. I remember.
Yes, Rangada. The recordings are of 2 years. In October, 2 years complete. And I think we started. We joined in. Maybe she started in April. I joined around June or July. So 1 year before that.
Ah,
2, 3 years are definitely over. Because many have recorded, and so I remember that much. 2 years we have started. The recording is 2 years back.
During
From
COVID,
October
we
that.
were already reading.
and thinking.
Yeah, we
Rangana, I
started.
started with the knowledge student.
Yeah, that's what in
Ah,
COVID.
that's right. Yeah. I remember.
I often say, Rangada, that
Ah,
COVID was very good for us because it gave us the opportunity to join knowledge student and then continue after that.
yes.
Otherwise, we could never have joined knowledge. We couldn't even think of. For us,
Yeah.
especially, Pallavi and Tarika have done their knowledge here, so for them, it might not be that, different. For us, it is so much an
No,
opportunity,
no, Archanadi, it is as special, more special.
isn't it? That's what I
Yes.
was saying. That joining the knowledge was one of the biggest gifts COVID gave us, at least. Okay, right.
Yes. Okay. So let us start. Tarika, you start.
Yeah. A
Splitting up.
splitting up of the activities of human existence on a religious or an ethical basis, or both together, a restriction to the works of worship only, or to the works of philanthropy and beneficence only, would be contrary to the spirit of the integral yoga. Any merely mental rule or merely mental acceptance or repudiation is alien to the purpose and method of its discipline. All must be taken to a spiritual height and placed upon a spiritual basis. The presence of an inner spiritual change and an outer transformation must be enforced upon the whole of life and not merely on a part of life. All must be accepted that is helpful towards this change or admits it. All must be rejected that is incapable or inept or refuses to submit itself to the transforming movement. There must be no attachment to any form of things or of life, any object, any activity. All must be renounced if need be. All must be admitted that the divine chooses as its material for the divine life. But what accepts or rejects must be neither mind nor open or camouflaged vital will of desire nor ethical sense, but the insistence of the psychic being, the command of the divine guide of the yoga, the vision of the higher self or spirit, the illumined guidance of the master. The way of the spirit is not a mental way. A mental rule or mental consciousness cannot be its determinant or its leader.
Okay. Not a very small para, quite a big para. So we can do one thing. We can quickly we'll do the summary and then we'll go into each word. But there are some ideas which need to be clear. So, as already mentioned, the integral yoga includes all action in the world without exclusion in its own field of yogic development. Therefore, it admits no division of action in its various categories, often differentiated by other systems. For instance, they say, oh, this religion, ethics, this is ethics, combination of both. This is served as a, because morality without a religious component is possible, as in a secular humanism, charity, philanthropy, etc. Okay, this we'll discuss in detail. Then worship only. So only all exclusivity is not to be indulged in the integral yoga. Many people say business is anti-spiritual, so we'll never do business. Okay? But that's not true. It depends on the attitude. That's why Sridhar is saying everything can be included, including war, okay? As in the Gita. Okay? Mental rules that accept or repudiate certain ideas or practices are also excluded in the integral yoga, because only a spiritual consciousness, higher mind, element mind, intelligent mind, and our mind, has to be the basis for any action. The authority for sanction for any action is not mind. You don't decide by the mind, but only a spiritual consciousness. That also we'll discuss. Because when you don't have spiritual, you have to use your mind. So what does it mean exactly? Here too, all life activities have to submit to spiritual dictates. The principle of the integral yoga is acceptance of all action that helps and promotes purity of consciousness, and rejection of all that obstructs, hinders, and harms. So, in fact, it means that although you are not excluding business, but if business you find at the individual level that it is disturbing your sadhana, stop it by all means. He is saying acceptance or rejection, both are allowed, depending on it, but it's not the mind that decides. It's the psychic or the spiritual that decides. So, what happens if that is not there? That's what we'll discuss. That obstructs and hinders and harms. Again, there has to be total rejection of all attachment, even to virtue and good. Okay? Because when you become very virtuous, it becomes very, moral ideas you stick to. You don't do something, but the desire is there in the mind. It's of no use at all. All this is decided not by the mind of man, but by the psychic being or the self. Mind alone is not the leader of the integral yoga. This is what Sridhar is saying in this summary. Now we go back to each line and see what he said. It may raise certain questions. If it doesn't raise any questions, so much the better. A splitting up of the activities of human existence on a religious or a ethical basis, or both together, a restriction to works of worship only, or to the works of philanthropy and beneficence only, would be contrary to the spirit of the integral yoga. So it means if you exclude everything else and do only religious works, not acceptable to the integral yoga. If you are doing only ethical works, okay, that also is not acceptable to, and exclude all the rest. Ethical basis is fine, but if you are excluding others saying it's not spiritual, that is not acceptable to the integral yoga. Only worship I will do, and I won't do anything else. I won't read any sacred text and all that. I'm not interested in knowledge. Okay, if you do that, again it is contrary to the integral yoga spirit, or to the works of philanthropy and beneficence. Would only be contrary to the spirit of the integral yoga. Note very carefully, works of philanthropy and beneficence only. He is not telling you that you should not do philanthropy. But if you restrict it only to that, then that is contrary. Okay? That's what he said. Any merely mental rule or merely mental acceptance or repudiation is alien to the purpose and method of his discipline. So, now the question arises, if I don't have the psyche or I have not realized the psyche, what should I do? If I am an integral yoga I am pursuing, what do I do? You have to bring in that principle which Mother said, always act at the height of your consciousness. The highest and the noblest part of you, use that. So long as you don't have that, mentally you say, you know fully well that this is a mental rule I am following, but mother guide me whether I should do this work or not. I remember one man here in Pondicherry, he was traditionally, his father, his grandfather, they were selling liquor. And so he also had to do that. He continued the family business. But then a doubt came into his mind when he joined. He didn't join the ashram, but he became a great devotee of mother and son. I have seen him at night come to the meditation hall, and facing mother and son in those pictures, he started crying. Okay, sobbing actually, because that's the devotion aspect. And when the psyche comes forward, there is often a crying that comes in. It's not sorrow at all, it is devotion. So he was thinking of giving up the business. Okay. So, but finally he did not. He wanted to go into some other business. It's not necessary to give up. It's the spirit in which you do it. So any mental rule or merely mental acceptance or repudiation is so acceptance and also rejection. Both are not to be done by the mind. It is alien to the purpose and method of discipline. But if you are in doubt, appeal to mother and say, guide me. I'll continue without stopping, but guide me. And one day the guidance will certainly come. All must be taken to a spiritual height and placed upon a spiritual basis. So it's a long journey. It doesn't mean Sangha is not telling you, do that immediately, because you can't. If you don't have the experience, how will you do that? All must be taken to a spiritual height and placed upon a spiritual basis. The presence of an inner spiritual change and an outer transformation must be enforced upon the whole of life, entirely, whatever you are doing, and not merely on a part of life, not only one part of life, but also on the whole of life. Whatever you are doing, bring in the divine life. I love to say, in a very oxymoronic way, if you want to put it that way, that even if you are a hangman, okay, or you are a soldier and your duty is to kill people, appeal to God. And that work also is not to be rejected. The question comes up whether all hangmen can turn to spirituality. But if you do, then you don't need to give up the job. That's the whole part. I mean, I'm giving an extreme example to show how all-inclusive is the integral yoga. Any merely mental rule or merely mental acceptance or reputation is alien to the purpose and method of its discipline. Its discipline, integral yoga. All must be taken up to a spiritual height and placed upon a spiritual basis. The presence of an inner spiritual change and an outer transformation must be enforced upon the whole of life and not merely a part of life. All must be accepted that is helpful towards this change or admits it. All must be rejected that is incapable or inapt or refuses to submit itself to the transforming movement. So, I remind you that the integral method he has given very clearly in a very short way. He has said here in the mother. First is constant aspiration. We have said this before, but we will keep repeating it. Very important. First is constant aspiration. And what is that? Remember the mother and offer. Remember the mother and offer whatever you are doing. Even your thoughts, even your emotions, even your actions. Second, surrender to the divine. Don't start complaining, oh, this is bad, that is good. Calmly look at what's happening without rejecting and seeing why it is happening. Surrender. Then rejection, lower. So it is up, horizontal, and below. Okay. These are movements in the integral yoga. Aspiration above, surrender at the normal level, and rejection below. Okay. Whatever is there, which is a hindrance to you, whatever movement, become conscious and reject it. Reject it in the mind and the vital. Okay. So there must be no attachment to any form of things or of life. So form of things physical things. Okay? I like to have good clothes. I like to have good shoes. It's very interesting. There are some people, Nolida is supposed to have had a weakness for shoes. He had many shoes. I'm not saying he was attached, but there can be a preference without attachment. So that's what he's saying, all forms. Okay. So secondly, I know there was one gentleman, I won't because you jump to conclusions, but he wanted only silk shirts he would wear. He was a very good sadhak. Huh? He wear only silk shirts. And I knew him very well. And when he passed away, one of his silk shirts came to me. Okay, so this is forms, okay, form of things, or of life, okay, your desires or your preferences, all these things. Any object and even any activity. There are some people who indulge in certain activities. I remember there are some people who used to play bridge on every Sunday. Okay, you know what is bridge? It's a card game. It's a very, very intelligent game, very nice. And there are world championships also held all over. Okay. So, but when the change comes, you have to give it up. It's not at all consistent with a yogic practice. Okay. But all must be renounced if need be. All must be admitted that the divine chooses and it's material for the divine life. Including poor Arjuna, he had to fight and his business is to kill. Not only kill unknown people, but even his known people, his own family members. But what accepts or rejects must be neither mind nor open or camouflaged. Vital will and desire. 90% of the time, our vital will is camouflaged. You will always find a good reason for it. Okay? Somewhere the vital knows there is, and it knows. And reason also becomes an abettor. It becomes an accomplice. The reason also comes in and starts giving all sorts of very so-called valid reasons for indulging in that activity. So it is camouflaged, or it can be open. No pretensions. Yes, I like this, I'll do it. Camouflage vital will of desire or ethical sense, nor ethical sense, even morality. Morality can be accepted if it is useful, and morality need not be accepted if you find it to be either useless or even a burden. But the insist, so nor over camouflage vital desire, camouflage vital will of desire or ethical sense. But the insistence of the psychic being, when the psychic being comes forward, then there is absolutely no doubt at all, because the psychic being knows exactly what is to be done and what is not to be done, including even your comrades. Sometimes you have to give up a comrade, sometimes you have to welcome other companionships. The command of the divine guide of the yoga, vision of the higher self or spirit, the illumined guidance of the master. So, all this is acceptable. You have to try and get the guidance of the divine, the vision of the higher self, the illumined guidance of the master. These can come to you even with a brief experience. It can come to you. The way of the spirit is not a mental way. A mental rule or mental consciousness cannot be determinant or its leader. So, simply very categorical. But if I have got only the best part of me is my mind, and I don't have psychic or I don't have the experience of the self, what do I do? You act to the best of your ability, knowing fully well that you have yet to be guided. It's not necessary to give anything by mental will. Continue to do what you are doing. If you remember, or you may not, but he has said earlier, in the earlier chapters, that the divine uses every experience for progress. It rejects nothing. Okay? Even the saddest and the most violently unfortunate events also are used by the divine for your guidance, for guiding you. So that's what is. We go to the next paragraph. Pallavi?
Rangada,
Yeah, yes, tell me.
can I ask a question? Yeah,
Pardon?
I have a Rangada,
Yes,
can you hear me?
yes, very clearly.
Yes. Yeah, Rangada. You said that the mother mentioned
Ah,
you can always act at the height of your consciousness.
that's right.
Mhm. And this passage said the mental rule or mental consciousness cannot be the determinant or its leader. So
Okay.
the highest height of our own consciousness is not is not necessarily always mental. And can it be like emotional, or I mean, how can you tell what is the highest part of my consciousness?
That depends on each individual, no?
Mhm.
It depends on each individual. You see,
Mm.
you may be a very emotional person and you may not have the psychic experience, but you have a feeling that this is what I should do. Okay, and the mind will come in and give all sorts of arguments. But if you feel that it is the height of consciousness in each one differs, because a pure vital can certainly be better than a muddled mind. So
Mm.
it's a very general statement, and each one has to decide for himself, knowing fully well that I still need guidance. Okay, that's the thing.
So sometimes the emotional part can be the highest consciousness
Yes,
of
I agree.
ourself.
I agree. If your vital is pure,
Mm.
without the psychic experience, it is certainly better than a confused mind. Okay, certainly, it can happen.
Mm.
You have an instinctive feeling that this is I should not do. Okay, yeah. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, we'll go to the next one. Pallavi will read.
Rangada,
Yeah, tell me.
1 minute.
Yeah,
Another statement of mothers, which often I feel very helpful, is that always do anything as if the mother is looking at you.
yeah,
Is
absolutely.
there?
That is
So that is
Nolinda
another.
statement. No?
There, yeah,
Yeah. So that often, like if mother was present, would I do this way or that way? If we really step back and think, I think
Helps.
it can often help.
absolutely. That is the remembrance, na? That everything that you do, ask the divine whether it's okay what I'm doing or not. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the most powerful. Always behave as if the mother was present, for indeed she is always present. That is the one you are referring to. The big notice used to be there, and we used to
Yes,
keep.
Rangada, that is exactly what I'm referring to.
That that is Nolinda statement or Shrivindo's statement.
Which one? No, that is
This one,
Sri.
Shrivindo's. Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think Sri Arvindo's, na? Yes, Rangada? It
Yes.
is Sri Arvindo's, I think.
absolutely. For indeed she is always present. Always behave as if the mother were present. So, not exact word, but
Are
very,
looking at you.
yeah, very similar.
Always behave as if the mother was looking at you, for indeed she is always present.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. Okay, let's read the next paragraph. Equal.
Rangada, I don't have the text.
Oh, okay. Then Archana, they can read maybe. Okay.
Yes, Rangada, just 1 second. Equally, a combination or a compromise between two orders of consciousness, the spiritual and the mental, or the spiritual and the vital, or a mere sublimation from within of life outwardly unchanged, cannot be the law or the aim of the yoga. All life must be taken up, but all life must be transformed. All must become a part, a form, an adequate expression of a spiritual being in the supramental nature. This is the height and crowning movement of a spiritual evolution in the material world, and as the change from the vital animal to mental man made life another thing altogether in basic consciousness, scope, significance, so this change from the materialized mental being to the spiritual and supramental being using but not dominated by matter, must take up life and make it another thing altogether than the flawed, imperfect, limited human, quite other in its basic consciousness. One,
Yeah.
scope, significance.
Yes.
All forms of life that cannot bear the change must disappear. All that can bear it will survive and enter into the kingdom of the spirit. A divine force is at work and will choose at each moment what has to be done or what has not to be done, what has to be momentarily or permanently taken up, momentarily or permanently abandoned. For provided we do not substitute for that our desire or our ego, and to that end the soul must be always awake, always on guard, alive to the divine guidance, resistant to the undivine misleading from within or without us. That force is sufficient and alone competent, and she will lead us to the fulfillment along ways and by means too large, too inward, too complex for the mind to follow, much less to dictate. It is an arduous and difficult and dangerous way, but there is none other.
Yeah. So we have to depend on. So very interesting, and he is spelling out very clearly. We'll look at it here. I am reading each sentence. Okay. Or equally, a combination or a compromise between two orders of consciousness, the spiritual and the mental, or the spiritual and the vital, or a mere sublimation from within of life, outwardly unchanged, cannot be the law or the aim of the yoga. What he's saying, you may feel it so obvious. It is like that, okay? But it is not so obvious for everybody. I know there was one group in America connected with the ashrama, by the way, who were insisting that sex can be part of the spiritual life. He even argued with me, and uh, they ended up in a tremendous tragedy. You know, the whole place was destroyed. There were 3-4 cases of suicide. So this is what he's saying, that you can't combine spirituality and vitality, nor combine spirituality and mentality. Spirituality and mentality may be slightly better, but combining spiritual and vital can be absolutely a disaster of the first order. It did happen. I can even mention the name because this is it was Salem Institute. Okay, and one of those people were they're very much connected with the ashram. Not really the ashram, but anyway. So I won't go too many into details because criticism is not good. But this danger is always there. That's what they mention. Outwardly unchanged cannot be the law of the aim of the yoga. But if the vital activity, you are fully aware that what you're doing is not the right thing, but by force of habit you are continuing, try to go on rejecting it. And if you can't reject, don't get disturbed. That's the whole point. Never get disturbed when there is no success. Okay? And continue to do, but ask for guidance. All life must be taken up, but all life must be transformed. You can take up any form of life, but it must be transformed. Because every action, okay, can be the inner attitude is more important than the what you are doing. Very gross example I'll give you too. I am stealing for myself. Wrong action, wrong motive. Okay? I am stealing not for myself, but to feed the poor. I have no money myself, so I have no other way. And I have been, someone comes to me and asks me for some bread, and I have no bread myself. If you are led to steal a piece of bread and give it to him, wrong action, but right attitude. So there is no harm there, relatively speaking. All these things should not be taken as absolutely a rule. There is a great flexibility in spiritual life. Okay? Or telling a lie. Okay? Telling a lie with a bad intention is certainly bad. telling a lie for a benefit of somebody may not be that bad. Okay? Then telling the truth with a bad intention is the worst possible thing you can do. And telling the truth with a good intention is, of course, the best. There are so many combinations. Okay? So, and murder, just see, murder. Okay? Killing somebody. If you are killing to protect yourself, or because there is something to be, even in ourselves, there are so many things to be killed. Yeah? So violence is not something necessarily wrong. Ahimsa has been told that it is the highest possible virtue you can have. Not true. Not at all true. Okay? Even violence is used by the divine. So when you are using violence, there should be absolutely no anger, no hate, no disgust. And if the divine tells you that you have to do that, that's exactly what Sri Krishna has told Arjuna. So it's not the outer activity that matters, but it has to be transformed. Now, with this background, look at the sentence. All life must be taken up, but all life must be transformed. Okay? Right? So everything can be done, but with the right attitude. The attitude changes the activity altogether. It becomes totally different. All must become a part, a form, an adequate expression of a spiritual being in a supramental nature. By the way, here the supramental nature is meaning supramental, not supramental in the normal Aurobindonian sense, but in the sense of above the mind. Because in synthesis, earlier what was written, it doesn't mean supramental in that sense. How we no way of going to supermind. You first go to the spiritual planes of consciousness. So he is meaning here spiritual plane of consciousness. This is the height and crowning movement of a spiritual evolution in the material world. And as the change from the vital animal to mental man made life another thing altogether in basic consciousness, scope and significance, so this change from the materialized mental being to the spiritual and supramental beings, now it is this supramental, because it is including spiritual and supramental being, using but not dominated by matter, must take up life and make it another thing altogether than the flawed, imperfect, limited human being, quite other in its basic consciousness, scope and significance. I'll go to the sentence little by little, each phrase, because it's very important. Huge sentence with so many phrases. This is the height and crowning movement of a spiritual evolution in the material world. What? Every action can be taken up but transformed. And as the change from the vital animal to mental man made life another thing altogether in basic consciousness, scope and significance. So when the man came and with his mind, he changed the conditions of the physical world altogether. It became far more advanced in consciousness, scope and significance. In every way it became better. So also he is saying, this change from the materialized mental being. The materialized mental being, he is referring to the materialized mental is the sense mind, okay? The physical mind, which is based entirely on the senses, okay? So one who is basing himself entirely on senses is leading an ordinary life. So the materialized mental being to the spiritual and supramental being, using but not dominated by matter. There you are. There is the crux of the whole matter. You can use matter. You don't need to reject matter like the ascetic. You can use it, but you are not dominated by it. In other words, you can use everything in the physical world without desire, without attachment, without ego. That's what is meant. You can use everything you can do. Okay? Including even, I'm giving extreme examples so that you follow. Okay? Including alcoholic drinks. Okay? But as soon as mother found out that Sriyamdo found out that mother doesn't like, he stopped it immediately. Some people think that mother asked him to stop. That's not true. As soon as he felt that mother does not like, he stopped it because no attachment. That makes no difference. He has grown up in the world, in the West, and it is very natural there because it's cold weather and that keeps you warm. It's very natural for you to take a little bit. But the habit was there, and it's a Western habit. He continued here for some time and stopped immediately as soon as he came. By the way, mother never liked smoking, you know. Yeah. I remember I'm talking of the 1940s, okay? There was a very interesting movie that had come to the town. Its name was, it is a film on Ravi Shankar's brother was Uday Shankar, if you remember. Uday Shankar was very, very famous for introducing new forms of dancing in India. Okay, so that film had come, and a very famous film it became. So some people went to mother and said, "Can we go and see that film?" So mother said, "I don't like you to go. I'm not against films. In fact, she introduced films in the ashram. I'm not against films, but I don't like the atmosphere there. People are smoking and they're at a low level of consciousness. That is what I object to." And you know what she did? This you may not know. There was an Olympics, one film was 1.5 hours. Okay, one film had come. And you know what mother did? She booked the whole hall for the ashram for one show. It was a movie theatre called Olympia. I'm talking of 1940s. So everything can be accepted, but the whole attitude must be. This is the high time. Okay, that we're done. Now, what is to be rejected and what is to be accepted? All forms of life activity that cannot bear the change must disappear. So if you feel that it is disturbing you and it is not allowing you to grow in confidence, you are allowed to, be it business, be it athletics, be it football, or be it any activity. You can give it up. Provided you are doing yoga. If you are not doing yoga, it's absolutely fine to continue what you are doing. No problem at all. All forms of life activity that cannot bear the change must disappear. All that can bear it will survive and enter into the kingdom of the spirit. A divine force is at work and will choose at each moment what has to be done. Not the word at moment. One moment it may allow, another moment it may not. Okay? It depends on the circumstances. What has to be done or has not to be done. What has to be momentarily or permanently taken up, momentarily or permanently abandoned. Both are there. Taking as well, accepting as well as rejecting. Each thing can vary with the circumstances. For provided we do not substitute for that our desire or our ego, and to that end, the soul must be always awake, always on guard, alive to the mental guidance, resistant to the undivine misleading from within or without us. From within, psychologically our own, or from without, somebody encouraging you to do something. From without means externally. That force is sufficient and alone competent, and she, the Divine Mother, will lead us to the fulfillment along ways and by means too large, too inward, too complex for the mind to follow, much less to dictate. So, the integral yoga is very, very flexible. It may allow certain activities to some people, it may not allow some people other activities. It's an arduous and difficult and dangerous way, but there is none other. I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. Satprem used to have interview with mother for, I think, twice a week or something like that. And she knew very well that he smokes. And she even joked with him. And she said that I know you smoke. Okay. But she allowed it. Allowed means she didn't ask him to stop. Then, normally she was very much against uh, tamasic food, red hot chilies, pickles, and all that. Okay. But one day she gave a jar of pickles to um, Satyendra. When I read that, I was very surprised. So it depends on the circumstances, it depends on the people. Nothing is to be rejected or accepted. It all depends on the circumstances and the guidance. Life is too vast for exclusive solutions. Okay. We have come to the end of our session. We stop here today.
Ranganath, do you have time? Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes. Tell me.
It is not connected to this, that's why I'm asking. Otherwise, I'll ask next time. I just want to know, is there any difference between the ascetic path and the negative path?
Oh,
You can do it next class if it will take time.
no. It's an interesting question. The negative path is you reject everything as undesirable. Okay? But
I
the
didn't understand the question. I did not get the question.
okay. The question is there a difference between a ascetic path and the negative path? Can asceticism, or I'll change the question a little bit. Archana, you tell me whether it's okay. Ascetic path, can it have some positive aspects or is it always something negative? Okay, that's one way of looking at it. The other is ascetic path always rejected by the interior yoga? That's another way of putting it. Archana, I think she is.
Yes, Sangata. Yes, both. I have muted actually.
Yeah. So it is like this. Ascetic path is not necessarily something to be avoided. It depends on what the divine is giving to you, okay, and asking you to do. It was not out of exclusivity and out of disgust for money and possessions that Raman Maharshi became an ascetic. Okay? In fact, he didn't even have any clothes. He used to only wear a loincloth, okay, which would be perfectly disgusting to many. And in the Jain path, they don't even have clothes sometimes. Digambar Jains. Okay, so there's nothing essentially wrong with that. Okay, because if it makes no difference to you, then it's perfectly okay. Sridhar had to go through an ascetic period when he came to Pondicherry. There were no food, sometimes no food even. He had to take loans from people in the town, okay? Because there were many people who were admirers of him and they were very willing to give him money. He took loans and he paid back the debts afterwards. Okay? So, ascetic path is, it's not that you are rejecting life, but automatically when asceticism is imposed on you, you accept it happily as the divine is giving it to you. But it's not necessary. The ascetic path is not absolutely necessary. Even in the integral yoga, you can be full of beauty, splendor, wealth, richness. Okay, I'll give you an interesting example. I don't know if you've heard of Ramdas. Okay, because Ramdas was a man who was always Ram. He used to worship Ram, and he was quite well known in his time. They have an ashram on the west coast of India, Kanangad. It's on the Kerala, Karnataka coast, somewhere there. Kanangad ashram. He was very well known. So he came to the ashram and saw pakka buildings and all that. And he was a little surprised. He said, oh, so he is rejecting wealth. He was a spiritual man, but he is rejecting wealth. You don't need to reject wealth. You have to become unattached to it without desire. I don't know if this answer has satisfied you, Archana. Otherwise, we can discuss it further. But asceticism is not necessarily negative. It can be also positive, and Srimdo says that sometimes it is necessary to go to an ascetic period to test yourself. If you are surrounded with wealth and you claim that you are not attached, how do you test that by going into an acidic tendency and seeing whether the attachment is there or not. Is it bothering you? The giving up of things which you were enjoying earlier? If it doesn't bother you, yes, you are a karma yogin, like Sita's father, Janaka. He is supposed to be the perfect karma yogin. No attachment, but living in wealth and splendor and all sorts of luxuries, but not attached. Okay. So someone asked someone asked Srimdo, why does mother use silk saris and lipstick and perfume? Okay. Now the question is, mother attached to these things or not attached? I'll tell you two things, then you'll be surprised. Srimdo answered, do you want the divine to be represented on earth by ugliness and poverty? That was his answer. Okay? You want to represent the divine on earth by ugliness and poverty? So it's the attachment that bothers. Now I'll tell you about mother's non-attachment. You know, there was a time when Paul Richard went away and Swayambhu told them to fetch mother and put her in the guest house. She came and she was living in the guest house. And there was no money at that time for her. She used to use the one towel which they all had, and she used to use it last. Okay, after a bath. Just imagine. So where is the attachment? Yes, we understood in that way. I don't know if this is exactly what you meant, Archana, but this is the answer that I can give you.
Okay, Ranganath, thank you.
I gave you many examples to show how.
Examples here.
Yeah, exactly. That how attachment. If it is you are attached to asceticism, that is not correct spiritually. But if you are not attached to asceticism, if something comes to you automatically and you accept it, then that is okay. That's exactly what happened with Gandhiji. Okay? If people said, Gandhiji, you're too important, please take first class ticket. I'll give you first class ticket. He would refuse. He would say no. Okay? He is attached to his non-attachment. So, but if Srimda was offered a first class ticket, he will accept it gladly because it makes no difference to him. Okay? Gandhiji also was attached to goat milk, you know that, no? So it is said, in fact, Sarojini Naidu, you have heard of her, no? Sarojini Naidu said of him, it takes a lot of money to keep Gandhi poor. Because how much group milk will a goat give? Very little. So you keep a whole army of goats to feed him. This is the crux of the matter. Attachment to asceticism is not acceptable spiritually. The problem is attachment and not the actual indulgence thing itself. That's the thing. Okay, I think we can stop here.
Thank you, Ranganath. Yes,
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Did
Thank
it
you,
help?
Rangada.
Archana, I want to know if it helped.
Yes, it did help, Ranganath. It did.
Okay, au revoir everybody.
Au revoir. Bonne journée.
Au revoir.